What's going on, guys? My name is Arrow, and in today's video I'm going to show you that Ice Spear doesn't have to be a glass cannon. It can just be a regular cannon. So while I'm going to talk about the tankiness of this build many times in this video, this build is not a traditional tank. It's not going to just tank Shaper Slams and Uber Slams. It is specifically designed to tank certain sorts of things in the game. I'll go through some of the modifications later on in the video for things that you can change to make it more conventionally tanky and not just tanky for targeted content. As always, I like to make builds that's specialized in certain things that are better at certain types of content to make them more fun, more efficient, and not necessarily just make something that is an all content showcase. So for a long time, the prototypical Ice Spear Totem build was a 2k HP glass cannon that falls over when it's touched. It leaves it in a place where you can't really do much outside of just killing bosses really quickly, and I wanted to do more than that. So my goal with this build was to make an Ice Spear Totem build that was still doing big damage, but also could take some hits. The goal was threefold. I wanted to do the League mechanic, I wanted to do Sanctum, and I wanted to do bosses. For my Hydrosphere League starter, I really leaned into juice mapping. I was doing lots of legions, and I never even really finished the build in order to do all my bosses. So I bought my Void Stones, and I didn't do any of my invitations. I was just blasting legions and having a good time. I made a ton of currency and just said, I'll make a bosser to do all that stuff later. But for now, we're just gonna fly. So for this build, I had to do all my invitations, all the endgame bosses, the feared, etc. And it did all of that with flying colors. So how did I make this tanky, and what is it tanky against? This build focuses on defenses that help it not get hit. High block, high spell block, evasion, etc. When combined with a totem playstyle, which already gets to spend most of its time manually dodging, it feels really, really nice to play. So the goal of getting all of this avoid was, after spending a couple of days playing the League mechanic, I decided I need something that isn't going to get hit. At a high level in the League mechanic, you just can't tank anything. And there are reports of people who are 90 all max res Pathfinders with less damage taken, getting one shot at like 600. So I wanted to play something that would not get hit by things in the League mechanic, so I could spend more time doing damage, more time staying alive, and more time pushing the ranks. I'm currently in the mid to high 700s, and it's still very comfortable. I'm still doing the vast majority of my team's damage, it feels like, and that is with a very, very incomplete version of the build. So what I did was I finished the PoB. I wanted to get this build out to you guys because I've been playing this for a while. I've already started playing another build. Unfortunately, the case with the League mechanic is when you start a new character, you don't get to start at the same spot in the League mechanic. You get to start all over. So I think I'm going to keep this build around for a while, push to the top rank, and then have a mapper that I'm playing on the side. So this build cost me a hair under 30 divines. I actually kept track this time because a lot of people have been asking me to talk about prices. I don't want to say that this is going to cost you 30 divines. I bought some of this stuff on like day 4 of the league, so who knows what it will cost now. But do keep in mind that some of these items are mandatory to make this build work as is. Rational Doctrine is very expensive. When I bought it, it was 10 divines. Forbidden Flesh and Flame, I paid 3 divines total for. They could be more or less now. The Red Nightmare basically just costs what a Chayula Blessing costs. Don't buy one that's more expensive than that, because the Red Dream can be upgraded and it's very cheap. Replica Dragon Fang's Flight, if that gets very expensive, I paid 3 divines, but if that's super expensive, you can just get a +1 or +2 rare amulet that you can make almost as good, if not better, and then solve some of the problems created by the reservation efficiency elsewhere. So I wanted to get this build out sooner than later. A lot of people have been asking me for a PoB, so even though my build is not done, I made a few modifications to the PoB to showcase what it's actually capable of. Things like leveling my Awakened Gems for substantial damage increases like +1 gems. I finished the implicits on my gloves and boots, which are not done yet. Just some small things like that. And I'll talk about those things as I go through each gear piece. So that's enough of that. Let's get into the gear and the items and the gems and talk about how all of this works. Okay, so here we have Arrow Stompin' Turts. We don't like turtles, and this build deletes the turtles. We are level 94, about halfway to 95. Like I said, we're still playing the build. A lot more to come, but let's go through and talk about the gear pieces. So this is a very cheap one that I grabbed off the market. It's got cast speed and +1 and some spell damage. I don't know, I think I paid like 60C for this. You could upgrade this a ton. You could go for +2. You could get a much bigger cast speed roll, which would be very nice. Cast speed is a great modifier for Ice Spear because your crit is almost solved by the nature of the gem. Ice Spear naturally has 600% increased critical strike chance when the projectiles have gone maybe 100 units or so. I don't know, whatever the number is. When the projectile has traveled a sufficient distance. So get cast speed where you can. The helmet, we never got a helmet enchant. I grabbed this Crown of the Inward Eye very early on just to get something that was going to give me a little bit of damage, which you get from Transfiguration of Soul, Body, and Mind. We scale mana, life, and ES in this build, so this helmet is just a nice good boost for us. It's not best in slot, but it was fairly cheap. I bought a 21% for, I think, maybe 70C, and then the flammability is just what I hit when I got to Uber Lab. Definitely going to want to get Ice Spear +1, just a bunch more damage, and that'll be in the PoB. For the amulet, this was 3 divines, Replica, Dragon Fangs, Flight. This is a new amulet that has +3 to level of all any gem in the game. Very, very cool item. I decided I wanted to build around this, not because I knew it was going to be the best one, but because I thought it was really fun and interesting. And the reservation efficiency line also applies to life, so we get to use that to fit a little bit more aura in on our life pool. Our shield, these are fairly common. You can craft these pretty easily. It's 30% reservation efficiency from Hunter and a Shaper +1 totem. Merge those together and see what you get. I bought this one. It wasn't too expensive, had some nice rolls on it. I wanted block on mine. A bigger block roll would have been better. And then the recharge is kind of a dead mod because we heal with regen, so the recharge isn't that important, but not a bad shield. On our boots, this is just solving a few problems. We grabbed some dex because we were dex starved and a little bit of res. These are terrible boots. And then the implicits. Sapped ground is whatever. I probably would go for maybe scorched ground when a unique enemy is nearby, and then you can run under the uniques and give them scorch, and it would last a pretty long time. And then the other modifier, avoid being poisoned. We don't even get avoid poison. I haven't finished these boots yet, so what you want to get there is actually regen rate. I just ran out of the currency to craft the implicits. But again, I'm not done with the build. I wanted to get the video out to you guys, and the PoB will have all this corrected. On the gloves, we grab some life, some more regen, chaos res, and strength. Getting stats on gear is so nice to enable tattoos, which we will go through. So you want unnerve on hit here. The other mod is not super important. There's none that are really that strong. You can get increased effect to your marks, but it doesn't really add that much damage. So really anything that you find useful as the other implicit, you can grab. Very low priority. For our rings, we go the Anathema Moonstone ring. This is phenomenal for getting us additional curses. We actually have space for another curse that we don't even use, but it's still worth having even though we're not at 4 curses. As a Hierophant, we get 4 base power charges. So if we wanted to find another curse, we could. Maybe instead of these gloves, you go for a pair of unique gloves and you get a curse there. Something like Punishment would be nice. Temp Chains, Enfeeble, all of those things that would help us defensively would be very, very nice to have. So open curse if you can find one. The chest, we have a 6-link Soul Mantle. This does not have +2 projectiles on it, but it should at about 20% more damage. We build the traditional Self-Flagellation curse, unaffected by curses, Soul Mantle build, and it's very, very strong. Our other ring, we get a chunk of Chaos Res that we really needed. You can actually craft reduced effective curses on you as a suffix. So I combine this with permanent consecrated ground and a few tattoos on the tree to get to 100%. Consecrated ground naturally gives you 50% reduced effective curses on you. So combined with this, we're at 75. That means we need 25 in the tree. We just grab a few tattoos. Our belt is just more stats. We can fit all of our gear in and use some tattoos. I actually still have a few tattoo slots left that I intend to use, but that's pretty much it for gear. Let's talk about the flasks. So evasion is one of the things that I go for in the build. So you want an evasion flask, a jade flask, cast speed, very strong. A dying sun, I use this with an increased duration and kindling orb effect that gives me much, much longer duration. So when I actually need the dying sun, it's up for 10 seconds. We use a stibnite with, again, more evasion, quicksilver, and a quartz flask for phasing, because I think if you play a totem build without phasing, you're memeing yourself. All right, let's go through the gems. So on our life pool, we have an Arrogance setup with Tempest Shield and Vitality. We want life regen, and we'll get into that in a little bit as to why. A level 21 Tempest Shield is only one less spell block than a 2020 Divergent, which is very, very expensive. So if you're not using an Ashes, you should just be buying a 21 Tempest Shield. In our helmet, we have our 4-link Arcanist brand triple curse setup. We have a Sniper's Mark, a Frostbite, and Elemental Weakness. Obviously, huge damage on single target when it casts all three. In our shield, we have our biggest auras, and that is because the shield has reservation efficiency on it. So Hatred, Grace, and Petrified Blood. So I'll take this opportunity to talk a little bit about Grace. With Vol Grace up, we're about 80% chance to evade, maybe 65 without it. If I was planning on playing this build but not using it in the league mechanic, I probably would switch out the evasion for determination. With all the scaling that we have into evasion, if we switch that into armor, this build would be substantially tankier. However, evasion is much better for the league mechanic. Therefore, that's what I'm going for. But if we went determination here, combined with a granite flask and a basalt flask and an increased of armor suffix, you could get somewhere around 20,000 armor without changing any of the gear. I mean, you could go for better armor bases, and then maybe some other points on the tree to get yourself more armor. But you could then use that to grab a molten shell, which is, in my opinion, substantially better than a steel skin. So that's an option if you want to go that route. In our boots, we have our Phantasmal Searing Bond setup. This is one of my favorite techs. I try to fit this into every totem build. Basically, the way this works is Phantasmal Searing Bond allows you to get additional max totems. Now, it doesn't work for your main totem, but you can put extra totems down to give yourself the benefits of having more totems. So Phantasmal Searing Bond at level 20 with 20 quality, linked to an enhanced 3, gives us 4 additional totems. If you had an enhanced level 4, it would be 5 additional totems. So when you combine our main 4 totems with the 6 total that we're able to get from Searing Bond, that gives us 10 totems for Ritual of Awakening. 6 additional, which is what we get from Searing Bond, is 30% more damage, 3% mana regen per second, and 6% life regen. That 6% life regen also applies to our energy shield, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So very, very strong. Just for a 3-link setup, we get a ton of extra damage, a ton of extra survivability, and mana recovery. It's phenomenal. We also link a Void Sphere in here. It's linked to the enhances, not really doing much for it. It's given a little bit of AoE, but Void Sphere in the league mechanic is phenomenal, especially for a build like this that pierces. You pull all the enemies together, you have all of your totems down, and it blasts all of them. It does so much damage. If you're doing the league mechanic, you got to have a Void Sphere. In our gloves, we have a couple of movement skills. We have Flame Dash, which I use to move over ledges, and then a shield charge because we have so much strength that we need for Rational Doctrine. We actually can level this up all the way to 20, which is super nice. It makes moving through maps and zones very, very zippy, and highly recommend that setup. I also use a steel skin because I don't have any armor. I didn't even really have any space for a cast when damage taken, a Mortal Call. Not that it would be that efficient. We don't have any endurance charges to burn anyway. So steel skin is just okay. It's not amazing on left click, but for 1 gem slot, it adds some survivability. In our main links, we have a 21 Ice Spear. See, we get to level 26. You can get that even higher. We link it to GMP, Awaken Cold Pen. Now, when this is level 5, you will get Cold Exposure, which you could get on the gloves. I don't even have it at all right now. One of the many things that needs to be fixed. But level 5 will get us there. Awaken Added Cold, level 5 will give us +1 gems. So that'll be a huge damage bonus. We use Inspiration and increase critical damage. So that's it for the gems. Let's talk about the Ascendancy. So we talked about how Ritual of Awakening is giving us a ton. 10 total totems, will be 11 when we get the Enhanced 4, which will be 55% more damage, 5.5% mana, and 11% life regen. So powerful. One of the best nodes in the entire game. Arcane Blessing. This was changed, I think, last league to give you 20% more spell damage when you have Arcane Surge. We scale some Arcane Surge effect, which also scales that number. And we have it full uptime from our totems hitting enemies. Pursuit of Faith gives us an additional totem as well as 100% placement speed, which means we can get our totems down really quickly. And then Conviction of Power gives us 4 power charges and 4 endurance charges. A little bit of extra fizz. We get to use the resistances from endurance charges, which is really nice, and some crit. So let's talk about our jewels, because the jewels are really what make this build. The Lethal Pride gives us some double damage. We have a triple double damage Lethal Pride. This was not too hard to get. I think I paid a divine for it, maybe less. I think I paid 40C for it. There was a bunch on the market. Use the Timeless Jewel Finder in PoE to get one that's got some double damage. The reason you want double damage on a cold build is because those double damage hits are much more likely to freeze and give big chills. So if you're hitting 100 times per second, which Ice Spear hits a ton, that 15% double damage means you're going to be double damaging all the time. So much more likely to freeze things and chill them. We have the Red Nightmare in here, which is such a cool piece of tech that was brought this league by Tattoos. So basically what you do is you put the Red Nightmare here, you come over here, you grab all this block and resists, then you tattoo 3% all elemental resistances on all the nodes that you take. The reason we do that is because this jewel says passives granting fire res or all res in the radius grant chance to block attack damage at 50% of its value. So 3% will give you 1 block on each of these nodes. I think we get 23 block from this jewel as is, and you can actually path this way and grab another one. If I had more levels, I'd probably come down here and get Constitution and Iron Will. Again, another 2 strength nodes that we can tattoo, and then Iron Will's a decent bit of damage and some more life. Another reason to come down here is to grab Honored Tattoo of the Wise. We get +1 all intelligence skill gems for 1 point. This is fantastic damage. These are super cheap now. No reason not to fit this in your build if you can help it. And then the most important jewel is Rational Doctrine. This was around 10 divines when I bought it. I'm not sure what it's at now, but this gives you consecrated ground around you while stationary if strength is your highest attribute. Very important when you're doing your tattoos to make sure that your strength stays higher than your intelligence. It can be a little finicky. You have to get some strength on your gear, but very much worth it. Effects of consecrated ground also linger for 4 seconds. So when you combine that with Pious Path makes it so that your life regeneration also applies to your energy shield. We've got around 900 or 1,000, so that's 1,000 energy shield regen, which makes your ES pool essentially just a bigger life pool. I'm a big fan of hybrid builds, but the problem with a lot of the ones that I see online are that people don't have good enough ES recovery for it to really count as life. But if you're recovering it as fast as you're recovering your life, then it's just more life. And then when you take a big enough hit that you have lost life and ES, you recover both at the same time, which effectively doubles your recovery. If I had space, I would put the Timeless Jewel in here that gives you life as extra ES to have an even bigger pool, but I just couldn't fit it into the build. And then lastly, we have the Self-Flagellation. These are super cheap. Get the 20% one. You can have like 8 curses on you, so that's 160% increased damage. For our cluster, we have Conjured Wall and Mage Hunter. This gives us spell damage and spell block. You've always cast a spell recently, so this is permanently up. Then on our totem cluster, we have Sleepless Sentries, which on every totem build is mandatory, and Snaring Spirits. Snaring Spirits gives us a little bit of damage, but also hinder. Anything we can do to slow the enemies down, including in the league mechanic, is really powerful. These are just huge damage. Repeater is nuts. It's like 9% more damage for us. And then Shrieking Bolts gives taunt. Pretty sure they nerfed the taunt interaction in the league mechanic, but that is okay. So let's talk about our tattoos. We have tattoos all over the place and we have space for some more. I use Chaos Res in a few places. I use all attributes in a bunch of places to help solve my issue of having not enough strength and dex and way too much intelligence. Now, you probably shouldn't try to follow this exactly, but use them to solve your problems as needed. We also have a curse effect on a bunch. I think I have 5 of these curse effect ones. I use some percent life ones where I can. I still have an int one that I can use here. Take some more percent life here. All attributes, and then all of these are elemental resistances. The cool thing about this is not only does it give you the block, but you get 9 res from it. So it becomes very easy to not have res on your gear in this build and just get stats so we can take even more tattoos. So if I had more levels, I would be taking this bottom portion of the wheel here up to Arcane Guarding to get a bunch more spell block. With this, we will actually be overcapped by 1. Currently have like 60 something spell block, but when I get more levels, these will be the notes I'm taking to make sure that I'm getting hit even less in the high levels of the League mechanic. We scale up a little bit of Arcane Surge here, more spell block here. This caster mastery is super important. 6% increased cast speed for each non-instant spell you've cast recently. So you're always going to be casting your Ice Spear Totem, that's 1. Your Arcanist Brand, that's 2. Your Searing Bond totems are always going to be going down, that's 3. And your Void Sphere every once in a while, probably every 4 seconds. So that's 4 pretty much full uptime, definitely 3 full uptime, which means you are either at 18% cast speed or 24, which is a huge amount. Absolutely must have. This wheel is pretty good, but this caster mastery makes it very much work. We are low life, so we take Pain Attunement. I normally wouldn't be taking these 3 points, but because I got double damage on it, I took it. If you don't get a double damage note here, you can drop these 3 and you can invest them right into your defense. I honestly probably should be doing that because my defense or my offense is okay, and I'd rather have more spell block. So that was probably way too long, but that is the build. I don't think I'm going to be releasing another POB for this. I updated the POB that I'm going to be linking in the description below to basically have the things that I'm going to very easily have in this build. Like I said, the implicits on my boots and gloves, you know, leveling up your gems. You can definitely upgrade this wand. I don't think I have one updated wand in there, but getting something like +2 and more cast speed would be better. Get your implicit. These are all things that I might chase down, I might not, depending on how it feels later in the League mechanic. But I have a new build that I'm playing in maps. I am desperately trying to make this work. Whirling Blades Ignite. So stay tuned for that. Come check us out on Twitch, twitch.tv/AER0___, and you can see that build in action. I'll be live right after this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. I really appreciate all your eyeballs. And as always, take care.